you're going to deploy people from the city of Poughkeepsie into new tech jobs, as we talked about a moment ago, well, they need to have housing that workforce housing that they can afford.
Hi there, it's WAMC News Director Ian Pickus. And on this episode of the WAMC News Podcast, we meet the incoming mayor of Poughkeepsie, New York. Well, in January, Republican Poughkeepsie Mayor Rob Rolison will leave the post to assume a new role as state senator from New York's 39th district. City Administrator Marc Nelson will be sworn in as acting mayor. Nelson joined the Rolison administration in 2016. He was appointed finance commissioner at a time when the city was facing tough fiscal hurdles. Nelson was named city administrator a year later. He spoke with my colleague Lucas Willard, WAMC's Southern Adirondack bureau chief.
I think, we're looking forward to having an opportunity to both finish what Mayor Rolison's team began, but also, I admit I'm excited about the opportunity to set a course ahead that may have some of my own fingerprints on it as well.
How does the role of a city administrator differ from a mayor?
Well, right. So the city administrator is a subject matter expert, a professional that meets certain qualifications. So here in the city of Poughkeepsie, by charter, the city administrator must hold a master's in public administration or some similar academic equivalent, and must have a number of years of experience running cities of similar size. I have those credentials, obviously, and did when I was promoted to city administrator in 2017. My job as city administrator has been to, run the city day to day and, work with our several collective bargaining groups to maintain great relations with our labor force. Obviously, I'm the chief negotiator for the city when it comes to all of our collective bargaining agreements. We've got more than 350 city employees across, I think, 7 departments. And all of the department heads report to the city administrator. That's police and fire, DPW, and development and others. So it's a big job, and I think that the framers of our charter, and indeed, this is not unique to Poughkeepsie. I think it's one of the top 3 or 4 forms of government, nationwide. You've got an elected mayor, an elected council, but you have a professional running the organization, which is I think that in my view that's the best way to do it. What's really exciting about this is that because of my being elevated to the mayor's role, now the city is going to, in my view, benefit from having the professional in the top job, and that I don't think that that's necessarily unique. It may not be the only time that you've got someone with my experience, elevated to the mayor's role, but it is an opportunity for us to, as I said, finish some of the things we started, but also maybe leverage my particular strengths and skills and abilities for the betterment of the city.
In your closeness in working with Mayor Rolison, who's moving on to the state Senate, how do you think that will benefit Poughkeepsie as far as state legislation and funding goes?
Well, obviously, it's a benefit that we are excited about. I think that really there's not enough emphasis placed, not just here, but around the country, frankly, on the importance of relationship building. And what you've seen is frankly, the world and the country going the other direction, where relationships seem to matter less and less, and that is contributing to the partisanship and to the gridlock and frankly to the animus that the country faces. But here in the city of Poughkeepsie and through our region, we've seen the benefit of close relationships work. For example, Mayor Rolison's relationship with outgoing county executive Marcus Molinaro, who, as your audience knows, is on his way to Washington now as a newly elected congressman. Rob and Marcus have worked well together for years, and I think the city has benefited from that. You can look at specific examples of the collaboration that we've seen. Just look at the Youth Opportunity Union that is underway at the site of the former YMCA. That building, was vacant essentially in downtown Poughkeepsie for a decade or more. And the city and the county work closely together to come up with a plan that really is going to change the landscape when it comes to youth opportunity and youth services, not just in the city of Poughkeepsie, but Dutchess County as a whole. I'm not sure that would have happened if it wasn't for the close relationship between the city and the county. And, I also know before I got here in 2016 that the relationship between the city and outside stakeholders was pretty much at an all-time low. And not just with the county, but with other stakeholders as well. And I think that a lot has improved since then. And there's other examples too. But in terms of my relationship with Mayor Rolison, obviously he will be in the minority in Albany. So because of that, I don't know that tremendous amounts of cash would flow and funding would flow to the city necessarily. But there are some important pieces of legislation that we know that Mayor Rolison will champion when he gets to the Capitol. He has more than 2 decades of experience in public safety. As you know, he was a town of Poughkeepsie policeman for a long time. I think 28 years or something like that. And so, his background in public safety is really vital. And I think it's going to play an important role in his legislative career up in Albany, and that can only help the city of Poughkeepsie. So it's not just about the funding. It's about, I will have his phone number, and he has mine, and he loves the city of Poughkeepsie. He is now, taking on a broader role throughout the 39th Senate District, but, we know that his heart's in the city of Poughkeepsie, and we know he's going to do everything he can for our community.
Poughkeepsie was put in the national spotlight a couple of months ago when President Biden visited and IBM made its announcement that it would invest $20 billion in its New York State facilities. What do you think of the future of the city as it seeks to become even more of a tech hub?
It's really great to be, entering the mayor's office at this particular time. I think that, not all of the fiscal problems are behind us, but we do have our deficit down to under $3 million. We're, optimistic that Moody's is going to increase our bond rating to above investment grade in 2023. And we have been the recipient. We are the beneficiary of just over $20 million in federal ARPA money, given to the city under the Biden administration's American Rescue Plan Act. So the question about the region becoming the tech hub that we know it is and will be is particularly important to the city of Poughkeepsie, because at the end of the day, it's all about jobs, it's about employment, it's about economic development. One of the biggest challenges here in the city and indeed the region, we're not alone, is the housing crisis and the shortage of affordable housing throughout the region, and indeed the shortage of housing at all income points. It's not just the affordable, but even market rate. And so what can we do to lower the cost and make it more affordable for folks to live in the city of Poughkeepsie and indeed the region? One of the things you need to do is talk about salaries, and we don't talk about income and jobs as much as we should. I think every time we talk about affordable housing and the housing crisis, we need to not just focus on the rents are extraordinary. Yes, we know that. But there isn't enough dialogue, in my view, in my personal view, around the minimum wage and job training and access to jobs. So when you see President Biden come to this region and make the type of announcements he's made recently, I think that should send a flare up to everybody in the city of Poughkeepsie that we're on the move and some good things are happening.
Let's go back to the question of wages. I know there's not much you can do as a mayor in regards to a state minimum wage, but would you support an increase or an adjustment? What would you like to see when it comes to a state minimum wage?
Well, I support increasing the minimum wage. Obviously, inflation is high, and I think we know that there is no easy solution to the economic challenges that the citizens, the residents, and the businesses of the city of Poughkeepsie are facing right now. Yes, the pandemic has waned, and yes, the city and even individuals received as much help from various levels of government, everything from extended unemployment benefits to eviction and foreclosure moratoriums and access to emergency rental relief and all of these programs that the various levels of government have deployed in response to the pandemic. The problem is that the pandemic wanes, but the problems persist. And you're seeing sharp increases in rents in the city and around the area. And what that can mean, unfortunately, is that we will not have the workforce housing. You can call it market rate or call it affordable. The fact of the matter is that if you're going to deploy people from the city of Poughkeepsie into new tech jobs, as we talked about a moment ago, well, they need to have housing that workforce housing that they can afford. And so I would like to see increases in the minimum wage. I support that personally. As you said, there's not much the city can do about that. But from an economic development perspective, we will partner with Dutchess County and with the state economic development machine to do everything we can at the local level to promote the type of development that we need, particularly with housing. The city's currently undergoing consideration and public discourse about changing and updating our zoning code. We just recently adopted a brand new comprehensive plan, updating an old one I think was last updated about 20 years ago. And now we're moving on to redrafting our zoning code, which is also very antiquated. And it's amazing. I think I've learned a lot in my role as city administrator about the importance of zoning and how local government can either streamline processes or they can impede processes. And we're certainly not at the cutting edge of either. We're somewhat in the middle of the pack, but we can learn a lot from our peer cities. And I think our team here at City Hall is doing an excellent job of identifying best practices around the state and the country, bringing them to Poughkeepsie and deploying them here. I think that's the right strategy.
I was wondering if you had any conversations with colleagues in the city of Kingston, not too far away. In November, Kingston approved a 15% rent reduction in rent-regulated apartments. Is that something that intrigues you? What do you think of that idea?
It intrigues me, not necessarily positively. I would say that that's one example of where the courts obviously are going to insert themselves. And the legal, the case laws on these things, are yet to be determined. I think that Kingston is certainly out in front in a number of areas. I monitor what Mayor Noble and others, his team, do in the city of Kingston. I think that the city of Poughkeepsie is in a little bit of a different position, and that is that we've been involved in litigation about development, particularly with respect to the southern waterfront, for example, for more than a decade. We have a number of, at least two come to mind, development projects that are well behind schedule, if you will, as a result of litigation. There's also been over the last couple of years some litigation between the Rolison administration and the Common Council. So it's my goal as the incoming mayor to make sure that to the extent we can, we don't get the city of Poughkeepsie involved unnecessarily in litigation. If our peer sister cities are passing legislation that's coming under fire in the courts, then what we should do is sit back and wait until those legal issues are answered, as opposed to passing something ourselves and just ending up a co-defendant in litigation that costs our taxpayers money.
And Marc Nelson, do you have any plans to continue a mayorship or run for mayor as you serve in the acting role?
It's a question that we're looking at carefully. One of the things that happened as a result of COVID is that the petitioning period and the primary periods were moved up and are actually much earlier in the calendar year than they used to be. And so as a result of that, everybody who may plan on running, including myself, has to make decisions, I would say, within the next month or so. And I and my team are looking at that. I was hopeful, frankly, that I'd be able to get into the role and get my feet wet and then take a little time to make that decision. But I am aware that it's a decision that needs to be made soon. I've been encouraged to throw my hat in the ring, so to speak, and to stick around. I've worked very hard to get us where we are, but I haven't made a final decision yet.
Well, Marc Nelson, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me, and best of luck in the transition.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the time. Happy holidays.
All right, that does it for this episode of the WAMC News Podcast. Thanks so much to my colleague Lucas Willard for that interview with the incoming mayor of Poughkeepsie. And thanks to you for listening. Until next time, I'm Ian Pickus.